Lynn had never thought sunlight could be so terrifying. Not the gentle warmth of the sun itself, but the way it reflected off Eden's glass skyscrapers, creating bright daggers that sliced through the perfectly blue sky. Citizen 7294, maintain your pedestrian lane. Lynn ducked her head and adjusted her course. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had called her by her actual name in public. It didn't matter. Nobody here needed names. They were numbers. Perfect cogs in the massive machine called Eden Smart City, the artificial paradise built after the Great Collapse. The biometric wristband on Lynn's arm vibrated gently. Time for her morning Pacify pill. She pulled the white tablet from her personal dispenser without hesitation and placed it in her mouth. Everyone took them, 3 times a day. To control emotions, they said. To ensure collective happiness, they explained. To forget the past, Lynn secretly thought. As the pill dissolved into her bloodstream, Lynn's mind softened, her vague thoughts of resistance melting away. She continued walking along the white line, blending into the stream of identically dressed citizens in crisp white uniforms, heading toward the central control building where she worked as a data analyst. Citizen 7294, your work efficiency has decreased by 0.3% compared to last week. Director Vance didn't look Lynn in the eyes when he spoke. He rarely looked anyone in the eyes. Eye contact could reveal too much that the Pacify pills couldn't control. The Department of Pharmaceutical Development needs the data sooner than scheduled. They're developing Pacify 9.0, stronger and longer lasting. Lynn nodded. I'll accelerate my analysis process. I apologize for the inconvenience. Remember that our work is the foundation of peace. Director Vance recited the familiar mantra. And peace is the foundation of happiness. Lynn repeated mechanically. And happiness is all we need. As she returned to her workstation, she accidentally brushed shoulders with a coworker. The man stepped back, eyes wide with fear. The pre-collapse history had taught them that physical contact was the root of conflict. In Eden, distance was safety. Distance was civilization. Sorry, Lynn said curtly. The man didn't respond, quickly turning away as if she carried a contagious disease. At night, on the massive screen in Central Square, the founder appeared with a smile that never reached his eyes. The middle-aged man's face was surgically perfected to a frightening degree, without a single wrinkle despite his 70-plus years. Beloved citizens of Eden, his melodious voice emanated from every speaker on the streets. 20 years have passed since we built this paradise from the ashes of the old world. 20 years without war, without crime, without suffering. Lynn stood amid the sea of people, all staring up at the screen with the same empty expression. The biometric wristband on her wrist glowed, measuring heart rate, hormones, attention level. Everything recorded, analyzed, evaluated. Tomorrow, the founder continued, we celebrate 2 decades of eternal peace. And to mark this momentous occasion, Pacify 9.0 will be distributed free of charge to all citizens. Applause erupted, rhythmic and soulless like rain on a tin roof. Remember, the founder concluded, happiness is our duty. Emotion is the enemy. The past is a lie. Happiness is our duty. Emotion is the enemy. The past is a lie. The crowd repeated in unison. Lynn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lynn's apartment, like every other apartment in Eden, was designed to minimalist standards. 300 square feet, white furniture, 1 large window overlooking the city. No personal items, no photographs. Such things evoke the past, and the past was the enemy of happiness. She sat on her bed, the biometric wristband blinking blue, the sign of normalcy. Looking out the window, where Eden glittered with artificial light. From this distance, it almost looked beautiful. A thought flashed through her mind, dangerous and beyond the reach of the Pacify pill. Was there really a great collapse? This question wasn't new. It had been lurking in the deepest corners of Lynn's mind, waiting for the weak moments of the Pacify pill to surface. They said the old world had destroyed itself through uncontrolled emotions. Wars, crimes, jealousy, hatred. All stemming from emotions. Eden was built to prevent history from repeating itself. But what if it was just a story? Lynn stood up and walked to the blank wall. She placed her hand on the cold surface, searching for a seam that didn't exist. Behind this wall was a small room, where she hid all the forbidden things. A tattered book, a yellowed photograph, and a bracelet made from simple string. Tonight, like many nights, Lynn wouldn't dare open the secret room. The biometric wristband would detect the change in heart rate, the spike in adrenaline. The system would alert, and Lynn would disappear, like hundreds of others had disappeared. Instead, she lay down on the bed, staring at the stark white ceiling. The time for the evening Pacify pill had arrived. Lynn reached for the pill from the dispenser, but instead of swallowing it, she hid it under her tongue. A small decision, a silent act of rebellion. The next morning, Lynn woke up feeling different. Without the perpetual haziness of the Pacify pill, her mind was frighteningly sharp. Every sound was clearer, every color more vibrant. And she remembered pieces of another life. Stepping onto the street, Lynn had to struggle not to reveal the change. She still walked on the white line, still kept her distance from others, still lowered her head when security cameras swept by. But in her mind, questions grew louder. Who was the founder? What was the Great Collapse really? And what lies beyond Eden's walls? At the Central Control Building, Lynn analyzed data as usual. But today, instead of just processing meaningless numbers, she actually read them, and what she saw chilled her to the bone. On the screen, charts displayed the rate of population adjustments over the years. A small caption explained, "Citizens failing to meet minimum adaptation requirements." They hadn't disappeared. They had been adjusted. Lynn looked around the office. Every colleague was focused on their own screen, nobody talking, nobody looking up. Then her eyes caught a young man in the corner of the room. He was watching her. And in that gaze, for the first time, Lynn saw something other than the usual emptiness. He knew. The celebration took place at Central Square. Thousands of citizens lined up neatly, waiting for the founder to appear. Lynn stood at her assigned position, trying to control her heart rate so the biometric wristband wouldn't detect anything unusual. The man from the office stood 3 rows away from her. He wasn't looking in her direction, but Lynn could feel his presence like a fire in the darkness. The large screen lit up, and the ageless face of the founder appeared. "Today," he said, "we celebrate 20 years of peace. 20 years without the chaos of the old world. And to ensure the next 20 years are even more perfect, I proudly introduce Pacify 9.0. Service robots moved through the crowd, distributing small silver pillboxes. "Unlike previous versions," the founder continued, "Pacify 9.0 doesn't just control emotions. It completely eliminates the ability to feel them at all. No more sadness, no more fear, no more doubt. Only pure happiness." A robot stopped in front of Lynn, offering a silver pillbox. She accepted it, her hand trembling slightly. "And now," the founder said, "we will take the first dose together. We will step together into a new era of perfection." The crowd simultaneously opened their pillboxes. Lynn did the same, looking at the pale blue pill resting in her palm. "For a better Eden," the founder said. "For a future without a past." At that moment, Lynn's eyes met those of the young man. In that brief instant, a silent message was transmitted. "Don't take it." Lynn raised her hand to her mouth, but instead of swallowing the pill, she hid it under her tongue, as she had done the night before. And then everything happened too fast. An explosion, a column of smoke, screams, the speaker system emitting an ear-piercing sound, the large screen with the founder's face shattering into thousands of pieces. Chaos, what Eden claimed to have eliminated, erupted like a storm. In that chaos, a hand grabbed Lynn's wrist. The young man. "Come with me if you want to know the truth," he said urgently. Lynn didn't hesitate. She removed the biometric wristband, threw it to the ground, and ran after the stranger into the maze of Eden's streets. They ran through streets that became narrower, darker. This place didn't look like the Eden Lynn knew. Dilapidated buildings, walls covered with graffiti, no security cameras, no bright streetlights. "Where are we?" Lynn panted. "Zone 0, the man answered, still pulling her forward. "Where those eliminated from the statistics live." They stopped in front of an old iron door. The man knocked a complex code. The door opened, and they entered a completely different world. A large room with dozens of people working at computers, maps covering the walls, and at the center, a conference table with faces Lynn had never seen in Eden. Faces with expressions, with wrinkles, with real emotions. "I'm Mike," the man finally introduced himself. "And this is the 0-point movement." An older woman stood up from the conference table, walking toward Lynn. "You did well not taking the pill. Not everyone has the courage." "I don't understand." Lynn shook her head. "All of this, what is it?" "The truth," the woman said simply. "There was no great collapse, just a coup. 20 years ago, the founder, real name Thomas, seized control of the city by poisoning the water supply with the first version of Pacify. Within a week, the entire population became manageable." "But why?" Lynn asked, her throat tight. "Power," Mike answered. "Absolute control. Thomas was a neuroscientist rejected by the scientific community for unethical experiments. Eden is his massive laboratory, and we are his lab rats." Lynn felt her legs weaken. She sat down on the nearest chair, her head spinning. "And Pacify 9.0, she asked, "is the final step." the older woman said, her face hardening. Not just controlling emotions, but completely erasing self-awareness, turning humans into perfect robots. We've been preparing for this day for years, Mike said. The explosion at Central Square was just the first step. We've infiltrated the water system and are introducing a Pacify antidote into it. Within 48 hours, the entire population will begin to wake up. And then what? Lynn asked. Then we tell them the truth, the woman said. We show them what lies outside Eden. Is there anything outside? Lynn asked, eyes wide. Mike smiled, a real smile, not like the mechanical smiles in Eden. A vast world, he said. Not perfect, but real. There's suffering, but there's also genuine joy. There's conflict, but there's also love. There's a past, and there's a future. Lynn looked around the room, at the faces full of hope and determination. She felt something rising within her, an emotion she couldn't name, because the Pacify pill had long ago taken away her vocabulary for emotions. But it made her want to fight. It made her want to remember. It made her feel alive. I want to help, she said. 48 hours later, Eden wasn't Eden anymore. On the streets, people staggered like drunkards, minds reeling as the pacified drug gradually left their systems. Many cried. For the first time in 20 years. Many embraced. Awkward, unfamiliar hugs, but full of the longing for connection. The large screen at Central Square no longer displayed the founder's face. Instead, it continuously played evidence of the coup 20 years ago, of Thomas's experiments, of the real world beyond Eden's walls. Lynn stood among the crowd, holding Mike's hand. She didn't know what the future would be like. Nobody knew. For the first time in 20 years, the future wasn't pre-programmed. I'm scared, she admitted, the feeling that Pacify had concealed for so long finally given a name. So am I. Mike squeezed her hand. But that's part of being human. Up above, the virtual walls surrounding Eden, massive screens projecting images of a non-existent devastated world, gradually shut down, revealing the true landscape. Another city, larger, more vibrant, and most importantly, more real. Lynn looked up at the sky, not Eden's artificial sky, but the real sky, with moving clouds, with imperfect but warm sunlight. Where do we start? She asked. From zero, Mike answered. We start from zero, and this time we write our own story. If the signal reached your consciousness, comment, subscribe. And now goodbye and see you next time.